I would like you all to open your Bibles to John 9, 5 through 7. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. After he said this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told them, wash in the pool of Siloam. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. Really? There's like no way that mud and saliva could have any impact on someone's sight, and it could in fact be very, very dangerous, even if this person was an eyewitness to what actually happened. There doesn't seem to be a mechanism that would allow this to even occur. So if you think that Jesus actually performed these miracles, I want you to call in because the show is starting now. Welcome to Talk Heathen. Today is Sunday, June 11th, 2023. I'm your host, Dr. Ben, and joining me today is our very special guest, Jimmy Jr. How are you doing today, Jimmy?
Hey, what's going on? I am doing great. Little starstruck at the moment to be with the great Dr. Ben, but happy as always to be here.
Yeah, would you like to tell the audience a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am a former Lutheran. I struggled a long time with my religion, my upbringing. I think when I got into my mid to late 20s, I finally kind of shed that and started really questioning everything that I've been taught. I have 13 years of military experience, recently transitioned from my typical military employment and took a job teaching at the collegiate level. And so, yeah, I'm here to do Satan's work and help the ACA kind of, do what they did for me when I found them about a decade and a half ago. And maybe be there. Somebody tunes in, sees me and says, wow, maybe that guy's got a point.
Yeah, it's amazing. I actually was deconverted by the ACA's work as well. So it's great to see multiple people having an impact from this show. That being said, Talk Heathen is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Talk Heathen is a live call-in show, and we have open lines still. So get your calls in at 512-991-9242, or you can go to your computer browser at tiny.cc/callth. And while we're waiting for some callers to get screened so we can have some fun conversations today, we've got a question of the week. We're going to talk heathen to me. So last week, we asked you, write a Bible verse that improves upon the Bible. And we had 3 amazing responses from the comment section. So in number 3, the third place answer is Miranda Rensberger says, improvement upon Leviticus 18:22. Lie with whomever thou wishest to lie with, provided that all parties are consenting adult humans, for it's nobody else's fucking business. Or better yet, just delete all of Leviticus. And I really like this. I really like the creativity that Miranda took with this particular verse. But also, yeah, I would agree. Deleting Leviticus is also a great option.
What a difference that would have made in history had that been the original verse.
Oh, definitely. And in second place, we have Chuck Gatos. New Bible verse. Exodus footnotes. Upon the invention of barbecue sauce, the ban on eating pork shall be lifted. This is a great one as well. And first place, we have Anarcho Possum, which is a fantastic name. I love that. Bible verse that would improve the Bible. A big red F followed by see me after class. So nice. Thank you everybody for your amazing responses in the comments. And we have a new question for this week. So if you want your answer to be read on the show in one of these 3 places, you can put your answer in the comments and we will find which one we like the best and we will share them on the screen. So this week's topic is complete the question. If God is so great, why doesn't it? And you can answer below in the comments. We'll reveal the top 3 answers next week. But in the meantime, let's ask Jimmy Jr., what do you think your response is? If God is so great, why doesn't it blank?
If God is so great, then why doesn't it, after 26 seasons, produce a caller that can convince myself and Ben and the other ACA members that it is indeed real? Something to think
That's
about there, God.
That's a really good point. It seems like when people say that God has chosen to use man as an instrument to achieve his goals, it seems like these instruments were bought off of like Wish.com because you wanted certain things to be done, but the product you actually got is not accomplishing any of them. So if humans really are the instrument to help perpetuate God's will and help save humanity, we're doing a terrible job, and God could have, gone to a legitimate website for that. But what do you say? Are you ready for some calls?
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right, we have a couple. Let's take Solomon, him from California. Solomon, it sounds like you want to talk about the future of religion. Can you explain a little bit of your perspective on this?
Sure. Thanks for taking my call. I'm 65 years old, retired, a former Jehovah's Witness, passionate apologist for up until recently. And just like with all of religion in general, Jehovah's Witnesses are seeing a severe decline, especially in the younger demographic. It's becoming a very old religion. And of course, me just recently in the last few years, waking up and looking at the Bible objectively, I just now say, how is it that 500 years after the Enlightenment, we're still obsessed with this, mythology? But I think with the internet and looking at the demographics now, the younger generations abandoning religion in ways that we've never seen, I'm thinking maybe, too optimistically, that within a century or so, religion just might be one of those quaint things kind of limited to somebody like the Amish in a small community. Others say, nope, humans have an innate desire to answer those questions that are unanswerable, to get the comfort of certainty. Religion will never go away. What do you guys think?
Jimmy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that the church and religion in general throughout history, especially in the United States, has been in crisis mode several times. And what they are forced to do is kind of water down their message and readjust and come up with a new way to interpret or deliver what it is that they believe. I think we're going to start to see kind of a merging of ideology, if you will, where non-denominational has become pretty popular in the last, several decades. You'll start to kind of see a change in the way that message is delivered and the way that traditions and customs have to change to reflect society as it changes. We could point to the past in which we had women were granted the ability to, start pastoring or ministering in several colonies here. We saw fracturing throughout history since the Reformation across Christianity, and we saw that in the Muslim world as well. I have a funny story. I was looking for a business a few weeks ago, and I walked into what I could have sworn was like an insurance company or something, and it wasn't. It was a church, and I said, "Wow, they're really changing their image to kind of attract people and maybe even trick them into continuing to follow them." I don't think that religion in 100 years, to quote the caller, Solomon, is going to disappear or be anything, as quaint as you might think. I think what's more likely to happen is it's going to adjust. It's going to see what young people are interested in and try and respond to that to attract them. Young people are not interested in, for example, not having sex before marriage. And so that might be an example of something we see just kind of whisked away under the rug. So that's kind of my interpretation. Over to Ben.
Yeah, I have maybe a little bit different of a take because not calling anybody old here, but I think there's a generational difference with how I see the world, and at least what I'm seeing.
I'm old. I admit it.
Well, kind of what I'm seeing in my generation is I do think that a lot of people are becoming less religious and not wanting to adhere to organized religion. Although you still have a good group of people, like Jimmy was kind of talking about, how they will kind of join sects of religion that allows for equal rights and allows for some of their core ethics to play a part. But also, I think more so people are becoming fascinated with Eastern traditions and more like, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. A lot of that's predominating now, I think, especially in my generation. So I think if religion is to like die off in however many years, I couldn't tell you what I think that timeline would look like. I think we still would have a significant population of people saying that they believe in spirits, or they believe in a soul, or they believe in some other spiritual aspect of reality because of that desire to understand more about the world and explain away where they don't understand things. So I don't know if that particular aspect is going to go away, because while like atheism and not being religious is on the rise, I don't think we can equate that to the world necessarily becoming like equally skeptical. I think I'm not sure how it's going to go, honestly, but that's kind of my hypothesis. Do you have any other thoughts, Solomon?
Yeah, well, first of all, just to Jimmy's point, it's interesting how secular humanism has pushed back on religious bigotry, isn't it? And you're right, it keeps retreating. Jehovah's Witnesses, for the record, have doubled down on their homophobia, by the way. But you're right, Mormonism, others, they're softening their stances. To Ben's point, I think you make a great point. But I do see organized religion. Don't you think that the kind of structured, organized religion based strictly on certain interpretations of, scripture or whatever, that seems to be becoming a dinosaur, as I see it. But as far as the spiritual aspect and people searching for something outside of the material, that's our nature. So I don't see that ending. One last thing, if you guys could address, is leaving out of a strict religious organization or becoming an apostate. The believers don't care about your rationale or your reasons or your data. They see it as a moral failure. And I think that aspect of, this person is morally bankrupt, really is a strong way of keeping folks indoctrinated or keeping them at least attached to cults that maybe they don't even believe in anymore. I don't hear that moral aspect, that moral, kind of red scarlet letter, attached to apostates. But I think that's a big factor that, I don't care about your reasons. You're morally bankrupt. You've turned your back on God. And that's unfortunately very powerful. Thanks again for taking my call, guys. I really appreciate it. And thanks for your good work. I'm doing reverse proselytizing now, by the way.
Are you out of here, Solomon? Or I have a question for you.
Well, no, I just don't. I don't want to assume that I can just stay on. But
No, we got.
Well, happy to stay on.
Just give me a minute. I just want to know, what did it for you? You're a former Jehovah's Witness. What made you walk away?
Okay, just to summarize, I was born in third generation, very devout parents, but I was precocious as a child, learned to read, and my parents, thankfully, unlike a lot of JW parents, they bought me an encyclopedia, subscribed to National Geographic, and from an early age, 8, 9 years old, I could see the flood didn't make sense. So much of the Bible stories just didn't jibe with what I was, reading. And so the doubts were there, but you put them on a shelf as an 8-year-old and you go through life. I like to say that the leaks in the dam were always there, and mostly related to the historicity of the Bible and also the eschatology. Is Armageddon really going to come? They've been saying it for decades. But the two major cracks in the dam that made me leave were the eschatology. Jehovah's Witnesses have tied everything to 1914. And they've said, for many years that a generation will not pass away until Armageddon comes. And of course, it's 109 years now. So they came up with this ridiculous overlapping generation nonsense on a chart with a pointer to explain how we're 100 and some years in and nothing's happened. So I realized, that ship has sailed. It's time to give up on that nonsense. The second thing was The one thing that kept me attached to Jehovah's Witnesses was I felt we stood on high moral ground. We were the one organized religion in Nazi-era Germany that refused to Heil Hitler, went to the concentration camps, although there's complications to that story. But I felt we stood on moral high ground. We weren't like the other religions that wink at sinning. We disfellowship people, you know. That was destroyed in 2015. The government of Australia conducted a thorough investigation of institutional child abuse. They found Jehovah's Witnesses were harboring about 1,000 abusers, pedophiles that had abused 1,600 kids over 25, 30 years, 80,000 memberships in Australia, so it's not that many people. And they also saw organizational cover-up. It just so happened one of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, this is like the quorum, this is like, you know, the big leadership, was deposed. And in his deposition before this government investigator lawyer lied through his teeth. It shattered the moral high ground for Jehovah's Witnesses for me. Not only were they covering up child abuse at the highest level, not just locally, but one of the top guys, supposedly the closest thing we have to a pope, lying through his teeth and telling this man, you know, this guy was really prepared. He says, would you say that you're the only channel for God, you know, God's organization or God's spirit or whatever, you know, on earth? Oh, it would be presumptuous for us to say that. Are you kidding?
Well,
we're taught that from day one. It made me an atheist.
Yeah, Solomon, I think you can consider yourself, you know, lucky to have had the, what is it called? The National Geographic magazines given to you at the same time that you had the Bible given to you as such a youth. So I think what some of the things that you're talking about are not specific to Jehovah's Witnesses for sure. I mean, the level of cover up across Christianity in different denominations is, well, it seems never ending. And it's not just in Christianity. So, yeah, indoctrination can do great harm to people. And I think that that's kind of how we end up where we end up. And to your original point, I've kind of just been holding this in, but, you know, when we talk about the cultural norms kind of changing and the church having to respond to them, we see that now. I think the Catholic Church or the Pope in recent months has kind of tried to walk back a little bit the feelings of the LGBTQ community, not outright coming and saying, hey, you know, it's okay, but basically saying, hey, let's be nice to those people, you know. And when you're losing money, you lose your power, and I think the Pope recognizes that. And so I think that's an example of an incremental change that's on the horizon, that over the next, you know, whatever amount of time, 100 years, a few decades, we'll probably see a fracturing of that policy as well.
Yeah, it's along those lines. Yeah, along those lines, I think that the Catholic Church, with like a lot of those efforts, are like, it's very fake progressivism. Like they don't believe that LGBTQ people deserve rights. They don't believe that they actually want to support, but it's that money thing. It's that
it's pragmatic.
It's
pragmatic.
People. Yeah, it's the keeping the people coming through their doors, and they understand that young people are more likely to support the LGBTQ community. And so in order to keep this, even like for me, that was a turning point for why I started leaving the faith at all. Was I came out as queer, and I said, like, I'm going to hell no matter what, like whether I stay in this faith or if I leave. Like, being who I am is apparently in God's eyes enough to send me to hell. So why even try to stay in this? So you see people that, like, especially churches, saying that they support and saying, go spread love to the LGBTQ community, like, you're welcome to our church. But then they'll hide conversion therapy behind like this curtain of like religious counseling or like faith-based counseling. And they'll say like, hey, yeah, you're free to come talk to us about whatever's going on. But there's still that layer of like, the reason why you're upset with your life being queer is not because you're oppressed in society, but it's because you know deep down that Jesus commands you not to be that way. And like, have you ever tried just not being gay? And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff
Yeah.
still happens behind closed doors. So even you have people that feel like they're being allies in the church, and they say, yeah, well, but I go to church that supports queer people. But then they don't, even a lot of straight people in the church don't understand what's behind those closed doors because they're not the ones being taken behind the doors. So yeah, lots of interesting things going on, especially like with the Catholic Church right now. But any other thoughts?
Yeah, just quickly to your point, Ben. It's not just JWs, and since I've left, I've been soaking up every documentary, every series, like Under the Banner of Heaven. I just finished watching Happy Shiny People, the Duggars. And the interesting thing, and the realization as a witness, as a former witness, when you're watching all these different, whether it's Heaven's Gate or any of it, and as a witness, you think, oh, boy, those kooks, how can anybody believe that nonsense? And then as a ex-witness atheist, you look at it and you go, oh my God, it's the same nonsense, just dressed up a little different with some details changed. It's the same pattern. It's the same authoritarianism. It's based on the same concept that, we've got a channel to God and you better, listen up or else. So I do want to leave by saying, and I'm not being patronizing, I mean this sincerely, Ben, you, the entire LGBTQ plus community, I'm so ashamed that I perpetuated the homophobia for so long, and I'm doing everything I can do to be an ally.
Well, I appreciate you taking the steps to change and to help out the community. I know a lot of people leave religion and they have this immense guilt of like having harmed people, and that's real. Like, it's okay forward, and it's important to understand, like, we've all had bad views in the past. We've all done terrible things in the past, and you have to move forward at some point, and you got to understand that your efforts to make things better in the future do go a long way. And even coming from that background, maybe now you can have those conversations with people who are in the shoes you used to be in, and now you have a better way to approach that conversation with them. So I hope that guilt isn't eating you alive too much. A little bit's okay.
It's motivating me. It's motivating me.
Yeah.
I've become a reverse proselytizer. I'm trying to channel it, but thank you.
Forgive your former self, Solomon.
Indeed.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you guys for taking my call. It's been refreshing talking to you, and you keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you for calling in.
Take
and
care.
Feel free to call back if you think about more topics related to this that you want to discuss. But have a good rest of your Sunday.
I won't hesitate. Thank you. I won't hesitate to do so. Take care, guys.
All right.
Good call.
Yeah, that was a nice, wholesome start to the show. And if you like what you see on this show and with other shows with the ACA, there are some ways that you can support us, including merch. And every month we have a new limited edition t-shirt. So those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. There's a quote by Voltaire, and that is our newest limited edition t-shirt. And you can get one of those by going to tiny.cc/merch ACA to get that, because that shirt's going to go away just like the other limited edition shirt. So you got to be sure that you get one of those while it is still available. You can also like and subscribe to the channel, enable those notifications, comment below, talk about your favorite caller, talk about why I'm your least favorite host on Talk Heathen. No, I'm actually, if I'm your favorite, that's fine. You're probably wrong. But if you like Jimmy Jr., if you like any of the other people that have been on the show, feel free to let them know in the comment section. Those comments go a long way. You can also become a channel member, and it's pretty cheap every month to do that. You can click the join button below the video, and you'll get custom chat emotes, and you'll help perpetuate the mission of Talk Heathen and the atheist community of Austin. You can also send super chats with a question or a comment. If you want to ask a question or make a comment about a certain call, but you don't really want to call in, that is okay, because you can send a super chat and we will read them on the air live for everybody to hear. So those are all some great ways that you can support Talk Heathen and the ACA, and you can do those for any of the shows with the ACA. So go like, subscribe to all of the shows, and it will really help us out. So it looks like we've got some other really cool callers. And actually, this one kind of goes into where our last call ended. So I want to talk to Felix, him from Georgia, who's a theist, talking about the Catholic Church being a progressive religion. Welcome to the show, Felix. I'm a little curious about your perspective on this. I don't know if you heard the end of the last call, but what are your thoughts?
I heard a portion. Yeah, just the church gets a lot of flack for its history, so it's not perfect, but like there's a lot of progressive stances and moves. Like, for example, the Pope called for the decriminalization of homosexuality in various countries. He says homosexuality should not be a crime. They had a vaccine campaign. The church went all over with the Pope and all the bishops. A campaign so that everybody will get vaccinated during the pandemic. And one final example, during the pandemic, they actually changed their liturgy. So instead of everyone sharing the wine around the glass, which is their sacred right for 2,000 years, they said, okay, we're going to abstain from drinking from the wine glass to protect everyone from the pandemic, from the virus. So we only got it from the bread. Taken Jesus in and abided in Jesus. So it's a lot more progressive than people think, and I just want to, show nuance to the discussion.
Yeah, I definitely want to jump in a little bit just because of the last call that we had talking about the Catholic Church. So I get that the Catholic Church has made some steps, at least publicly, with regard to LGBTQ communities, and like it's great that they are advocating to decriminalize it. But my question is, like, what does it look like for queer people in the Catholic Church? Do you know the current official stance of the Catholic Church on whether or not like homosexuality is a sin?
Yeah. They believe homosexuality is a sin, just like sex outside of marriage is a sin, just like cheating on your spouse is a sin. So they don't from what I know, they don't point out this sin as being worse than others. They treat it like any other sin, but they still allow homosexuals to take the Eucharist. They still allow them in their church services, and they still allow them to be part of all the church activities.
But here's the issue, though. It's like you can extend all of those things to keep people in the seats, but at the end of the day, what ends up happening is you have queer people that will think, oh yeah, that sounds great. It sounds like this is a loving community. And then they end up joining, and it's still that societal pressure and guilt upon these people thinking, like, as at the end of the day, they're still telling you that who you are is wrong, and who you are is messed up, and who you are is going to get you punished for eternity, or I don't know, the official stance on the Catholic Church of if it's going to send you directly to hell or exactly what. But like either way, it's condemnation of people's identities. And so if you have people coming into the church, like let's use myself as an example. So I'm a trans man. If I were to walk into a Catholic church and I were to do all the things that you said I'm allowed to do as of now by the Catholic Church, what do you think would happen to me, as far as relationships with people in the church? Do you think I'd actually be accepted by people? Do you think people would try to tell me not to be trans? What do you think would happen if I tried to become a member of the Catholic Church?
It depends which church, because it's all over the world. So some countries, there's more like negative views about it than other countries. So
how about your church? How about
a typical church in Georgia, a typical diocese? They're from what I understand, they're very welcoming. They treat people from the LGBT.
But I don't want to know. Hold on, I don't want to know how welcoming they are, because here's the thing: like they're welcoming with everybody. Like that's part of recruiting people to your religion. Like I bet the Catholic Church would happily welcome a Muslim into the church because the goal is to convince them to become a Catholic and to convert. But the issue is like getting somebody in the church, welcoming somebody to come in so that they can be preached at is very different than welcoming you in and saying, I value your identity. I value your perspective. Because like there's a distinct difference between saying that you accept somebody and actually accepting them. And I think that's a difference with maybe our views on what progressive means. Like when I say something is progressive, I don't mean whether something is giving lip service to someone being your equal. Like that's the bare minimum of being a human, right? Like I expect, if we're talking progressive, I'm expecting people to actually follow through on respecting people. And that includes not trying to make them not something and not condemning them for like it's someone that is an actual ally of the LGBT community is not going to condemn them and is not going to wave the threat of hell over their head while saying, well, but you're still welcome in the church, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So there's not a lot of public comments from the Pope or most of the cardinals on hellfire and doom and gloom. There's barely any mention of gays being evil by nature. There's barely any of that mention.
Well, there's not a lot of mention, but do they believe it? Do they believe
now
it?
There's not a lot of mention. Not now there's not a lot of mention because, you know, they are in decline. And saying something like that would push them further in decline. And as we move into the future, right, we're going to start seeing more of that. But the Catholic Church comes from a place where the LGBTQ community was burned at the stake. I mean, they were equated with Satan for a long time. And so you can't just brush the history aside and compare it. You have to compare it to today if you're going to start to say, well, there's not a whole lot of commentary on that. Nobody's going to do something that's going to make their the Pope is trying to reverse this process of people leaving. And so 50 years ago, you damn straight they were saying things like that. Felix, before we move on, I just want to kind of throw a couple things at you. So one, the LGBTQ community, homosexuality in general, is not treated just like any other sin, like you said. People get divorced, they get remarried, they stay in the church. You know, people do things that the church forgives them for a lot more easily than they do if they are gay, right? So, for example, with what's happening, the developments in the Catholic Church recently, while they're paying lip service and they're giving this kind of practical nod to say, hey, maybe it's okay that you're gay, you still can't actually be gay. Like you can't go in the church and actually be gay. That's not forgivable. Divorce is forgivable. Cheating on your wife is forgivable. Your husband, doing any of those things is not just like being gay. And then my final point, while the church had changed its policies during COVID, how is it that you can drink the blood of Jesus and get COVID? I mean, doesn't that delegitimize your belief system, right? You're taking in the blood of your supposed savior and you're all getting sick from a deadly disease. I don't see how somebody doesn't question what they believe. And so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Maybe that's kind of a different topic. Maybe you'll give that some consideration later. But there's no way to really kind of give credit to the claim that the Catholic Church is progressive. The Catholic Church is responsible since the inception of the first Pope for 69 million deaths around the world. And so there's a lot more work it has to do than just to say to, for example, the Saudi Arabian government, hey, maybe don't kill these people. That's not kind of repentance enough for me to be able to consider them progressive.
Okay, so let me just say what I think progressive means, so we can kind of be like on the same, more or less understanding. They adapt with the times. They grow with the culture. So they have a history of a lot of violence and issues. But every country was burning people at the stake. Everybody did that. But they've adapted to culture, so they progress with.
But hold on,
you guys agree or disagree with that definition?
My counter.
I disagree.
No, my counter to this as well is that, like, yeah, they grow with the culture, because if they kept doing the things that they were doing, people would not keep showing up. Like a lot of this, you have to think about what are their reasons for acting the way that they are. A lot of it is because these church leaders, they would have no money if they didn't do what they do. If they don't keep butts in the seats every week and get the tithe from people, they're going to be homeless out on the street with no job. So like there's some pretty intense incentive for them to change enough to get people in the seats, but not change so much that they actually have to do anything about it. And like something, especially we look at the Catholic Church with things like medical missions, which you can look from the outside and say, yeah, you know, they're going into places and setting up free clinics and giving vaccines and setting up hospitals. And that's, you know, that's a good thing, right? But then you look at what is their motivation and how are they going about these services, right? Like a lot of these, you have the constant exposure to Catholic tradition and Catholic teaching. And you see this like even with a lot of the vaccine clinics, you give somebody a vaccine, but they have to listen to a sermon about Jesus, or they have to like at least be exposed to a prayer service. Like I did a couple rotations at Catholic hospitals, and every single morning there was a prayer over the loudspeaker that doesn't matter what religion your patient is, everybody is listening to this. And there's Jesus all over the walls at these hospitals. And like, on the one hand, yeah, it's a good thing, but is the reason why they're doing the good thing because they want to do the good thing? Or is the reason because they want to use that as an avenue for PR and to get people to join their religion? What do you think about that, Felix?
No, I think you're right. I think the Catholic Church has millions of leaders and hundreds of thousands of churches. So I think it varies from ministry to ministry. A lot of I would say definitely a lot of the ministry, a lot of the good things are done with that motive. And I think, but I also think a lot of other leaders do it because they genuinely want to help people. They generally want to do good for the world. Even if people don't convert to their religion, they still do a lot of good. So I think it varies because it's multifaceted and complex. There's many different dioceses all over the world. So I would.
So then you don't need religion. Sorry, go ahead. I thought you were wrapping it up.
No, yeah, I was pretty much done. I agree with that, but I don't think it's true in every case. I think there's more nuance to that. Yeah.
So then what makes the religion so much different than any other organization that can do good things? What makes it more necessary? It's not quite, it's no different than any other, company that has bad people or good people in it. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. It really is not significant. And if it were headed by an all-loving God, then why are these bad things taking place? To counter you on one other thing that you said earlier, every country was burning people at the stake. We're not talking about countries. We're talking about Catholicism and Christianity. And Catholicism and Christianity, where it existed, which was in many countries, sure, they used burning people at the stake as a method to keep people in their community. But we were not talking about countries. And as we understand countries today, those things didn't exist. And so there are very, very many nuances around different groups of people and what practices they used. What I'm saying is that for the Catholic Church to advance to where it has to the point today, or to the point where it was 50 years ago, it's in decline today, but 50 years ago, it had to burn a lot of people, for simple reasons, being gay, one of them. So that's kind of where I was going with that. But I appreciate your open-mindedness, Felix. I really do. To sit here and listen to the counters that Ben and I have, and to admit, you agree with some of the things that he says. I applaud you for that. And that's the kind of conversation that we're looking to have.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Felix?
Thank you. I guess I just want to make one more point, and you can counter it or agree. Just a genuine point. You said that the sin of homosexuality is non-forgivable as compared to the other sins. From my understanding, birth control is a sin, but Catholics are still allowed to be Catholics even though they're doing birth control. So my point was that homosexuals are not exclusively like treated as a worse sin than anybody else.
Felix, could I get married to someone of the same sex in a Catholic church?
No.
Right. So
guess
I cannot, like the consensus of a lot of religion, like they'll say, well, you can be gay, but you just can't act on your homosexuality, which is such a cop-out. And it's, again, that lip service of I'm giving you respect, but I'm not actually going to follow through on it. Because if you're going to acknowledge that being gay or being trans is not something that you can just suppress and hide and just pretend it doesn't exist. I mean, you can, but we know that that is psychologically damaging to people. But like,
It is.
if the
Yeah.
church would not approve of me being on hormone replacement therapy. They would not approve of the fact that I had top surgery. They would not approve of me going around being called he, him, and being even my name would be sinful in the Catholic religion. So it's like, yeah, you can say on the surface that these are treated the same and that you can forgive it, but really you're only being forgiven if you're not acting upon it, which is saying that trans people are not equal to other people, because I don't get to like, and literally all it is for me with being trans is that I'm happier existing in this body with this name, with these pronouns, than I do with what I had before. And that's all it is. Like, I'm happy being who I am. I am existing. And even if someone wanted to call me a woman, that's not going to change how I live my life, how I exist in society. So it's like a religion that's going to say, yeah, that's fine, but just don't act on it. That's kind of contradictory and not helpful at all. And I would say that that's the opposite of progressive, in my opinion.
Yeah, I see your point. Why is it a sin if it's not hurting other people? And if you were born that way, like, why is it fair to judge you for it? I understand that. I understand. I hope the church can change that position. But,
Felix, I think
right,
I think you're a really honest guy. I had a great time talking to you. I think you should definitely call back, and I'd like to talk to you again, the next time I'm on.
Yeah, I think this was a very productive conversation. And Felix, I want to say this to you and to everybody else in the audience. Like, you are one of the type of theist callers that we love to have on the show, because we disagree on some things, but we're able to talk about it in a productive way. Nobody is yelling at each other. We're able to agree and disagree on certain points. And I really appreciate that about you. So I hope that you call in again, and I hope other people in the audience will take that as a lesson. Be like Felix, everybody. Call in, have this kind of conversation. But thank you for calling in today.
I enjoyed the conversation. Have a good day, guys.
Yeah, have a good rest of your day. That was a really, really nice call.
Yeah.
And some more ways that you can support us on Talk Heathen and the ACA. You can go to Patreon at tiny.cc/PatreonTH. And we also have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form, and you can visit tiny.cc/AEN podcast. You can also become a part of the Talk Heathen community in our fan-run Facebook page at tiny.cc/FBTHG. And in case you didn't know, which if you've been here for any other shows, you should know this by now, but we do have a TikTok, and we are going there live before the shows every Sunday. And Richard Gilliver was, who's hanging out with us backstage today, was doing that before today's show. And he's on TikTok a lot. So if you like Richard, and if you like Talk Heathen in general and want some more of it, you can go to TikTok and find us there and watch live before the show every week. So go subscribe and join in the pre-show on Talk Heathen TikTok. And I think we have a super chat that came in around the last call. So Greg Markowski gives $5. Greg, I think, is super chatting every single week. And I love your support, Greg. It's great to see you here. And Greg says, thanks for the show, Dr. Ben and Jimmy Jr. Thank you, Greg, for your continual support. Very happy to have you with us this week.
It's almost not a show unless we mention Greg's name.
Right. This is, Greg, you have made your name part of Talk Heathen history forever. And I hope you go back every weekend and just listen to us say, we could just make a I mean, this is off the cuff thing, but maybe someday we need to make a clip of just every time we've said Greg Markowski's name and just make this this whole montage of Greg Markowski. That might be fun. Maybe I'll come up with that. We do have some interesting calls on the line still, and we have one that is in response to the chat poll. So let's talk to Cam, who's an atheist, he, him from Michigan, answering the question, is Pride Month necessary? Cam, what is your take on this question?
Well, I just wanted to ask y'all, like what was the content? Like, are you saying like it's necessary, like what do y'all mean by that? Like, because that was in the description, so.
Yeah, so do you think, I know there's a lot of people in the media saying, well, why do we need to have a Pride celebration every year? Why are queer people constantly rubbing it in our faces? Why can't they just be LGBTQ and not have to tell anybody about it? So I guess that's kind of the context of this particular question.
Okay, so I look at it more like I think it's important because it's a historical matter. Like we have Juneteenth and Black History Month. So, but I thought it was like, I didn't really know how to take the question because it's like necessary. Like, do we need it? Because I was like, okay, historically, yes, it would be beneficial because it reminds us of the things we did and many people did in the past and all the bad stuff that happened. So it's good to remember it. But need is like, I don't know if we need, but I think it's beneficial. So yeah.
So beneficial to what end? Sorry, Cam. Beneficial to what end? Like, why do you think it's beneficial?
Like historical, like isn't it like it's beneficial to know that slavery happened and that we should remember all the treacherous things that happened, like that kind of beneficial, like it teaches us something.
Sure. So in the same token, right, I think that dedicating a time and space to re-educate people on the struggles of a specific group of people allows that group to take a step forward, but also prevents kind of the rest of our society from taking a step back. I think that's kind of the aim for having a celebratory time frame like that. I personally think it's necessary so that we can ensure that a group of people that have typically been disparaged, and most commonly at the hand of religion, but maybe not necessarily, a group of people that have historically been disparaged are kind of elevated and celebrated. And we kind of treat that with the normalcy that it deserves, because all of us, regardless of what we look like or how we think, or how we feel, who we say we are, we deserve basic human rights, and we deserve respect and dignity from each other. And so I just think you bring up Black History Month and Juneteenth. I think those are well-deserved holidays and time periods. And for the same reasons, LGBTQ celebration, I also think is necessary. So that's my perspective on it.
Oh, okay. I just had one more question. It was so I am as you know.
Well, hold on.
Like I'm atheist.
Hold on, Ben. You're a member of the
yeah, I can jump in. I was curious if Cam wanted to respond to that, but yeah, my thoughts are very similar. That I think that it's very beneficial to have Pride, and it's very beneficial to have Juneteenth and Black History Month. I think all of them. I'd actually make the claim and go a step further and say that they are necessary, simply because, like, the fight's not over for any of these communities we're talking about. The fight isn't over. And I think when we say, like, we're just going to reserve this to being a nice thing that we think about and we remember the things that happened in the past, it's almost limiting it to thinking like, oh, well, that was a time back then. It's better now. And in all honesty, it's really not. It's really not better now. There are some ways that it is better and a lot of ways that it isn't. there's, especially with regard to the trans community right now, there is a lot of vitriol, like constant vitriol, constant violent crimes committed against the trans community, people being denied basic rights like housing and things. So these are all things that we still have to fight for. And we're looking back to things like Stonewall because like a lot of the fights that was happening at Stonewall is what we're dealing with now. It's just repackaged in different ways. And so I think maybe it's really easy for a lot of people on the outside to think, well, I don't see this stuff happening, so it's really not that big of a deal. I know myself and Katie Montgomery and other people who are trans on this network, we get constant threats. Like on Twitter, if you go look at either of our pages, it's constant, like thousands of people will just show up out of nowhere to tell you you don't deserve to exist. And it is that extreme. You have people quoting statistics of I don't know if you've heard of the 41%, but that's kind of known to be the prevalence of completed suicides within the trans community. And people will show up just randomly and tell you, I wish you were part of the 41%, or go join the 41%. Or even somebody will make their entire bio, make the 41% the 100%. And it's like, this is stuff that we still face. So that's why I would say, I think pride is necessary, because I think it does show people on the outside that we are still fighting and there is still a struggle along this front. So yes, I think I'm going to leave the middle ground a little bit and say that positively, pride is necessary.
Concur.
But do you have any thoughts about that?
Were you
Cam,
talking to him or me?
Yeah, Cam. Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, and I definitely think about Stonewall when I think about Pride Month. I think that's one of the key reasons why I think Pride Month was necessary, is because of that. Like what happened there. I don't remember it too well, but I just know that it was one of the key components of why Pride Month was necessary. So I would definitely agree with you, and I think it's kind of a limiting. I hate how limiting Pride Month is. It's like, why do we limit this thing to only a month? I feel like we should talk about it like all year. But
And something else too that I want to bring up, because we talk a lot about the fear and the stigma associated with the LGBTQ community, and when we talk about this never-ending fight for our rights associated with Pride Month, and it's all very important to talk about that. But I also want to mention how important it is to talk about queer joy and seeing our community as humans enjoying our lives. There are a lot of struggles I have being trans, but I'm very happy with who I am. I'm very happy with my community for the most part. I experience a lot of joy on a daily basis. And I think something else that happens with Pride is it's necessary to showcase queer joy. Because I think looking at that, and even more so for a lot of people that are on the fence with fighting for queer rights, is this issue of just seeing our community having joy. And if you look at us and say, hey, why do I need to take this joy away from this community? I think oftentimes the majority of people want the best things for their fellow humans. And I think even going beyond the vitriol and going beyond the sticky issues and just seeing people as people and seeing their joy and their happiness for who they are, I think that often works to help people become better allies. So I did want to point out the joy component. But Jimmy, do you have any other thoughts on this?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, I would echo. I started off with my comments. I fell short of going the route you did, but I would echo what you said. And I appreciate the call from Cam.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Cam?
Could I ask one more question? It's
Yeah,
not about,
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
It's a whole separate topic. So, I'm like a atheist and whatnot, and so when I try to explain that to my friends, it's like, or just one of my singular friends, he has trouble like getting. I think he has trouble getting his head around that, and I struggle to explain it to him, like where I come from, because most of the information I get is from watching the podcast from AXP and whatnot and The Line, and I tell him like most of the stuff I get from there and what I believe and whatnot, and I don't think he understands it very well. So do you think you could give me some advice?
Yeah, Jimmy, how would you explain this?
So, Cam, pretend I'm your friend. What would you tell me about who you are or how you are or what you're talking about?
I would say, I don't believe in God, and that I'm, man, usually he asks me the questions, so, I just don't believe in God. That's about it. I think
Yeah,
that's the key component.
and I think people usually want to follow up because you have to understand. What made you not believe in God? Were you raised religious, or did that come later?
I was raised religious.
Did atheism come later? You were raised religious?
Yes, it came. Yeah, atheism came later. Raised religious.
And what happened?
What happened? Nothing detrimental. I just kind of fell away from it. It's like the more I thought about it, I was like in this gray area of like not really understanding, being confused, and I think that confusion just led me like away.
So I mean, I'm no doctor, and I often listen. Yeah, I'm not a counselor or anything, and I often listen to these shows. And every time somebody calls with a question like yours, whatever the host says has a better answer than I have. But I'm going to do my best. I'm just going to tell you that you have to understand people that you speak to about your perspective were raised probably the same as you, but maybe even with worse conditioning and worse indoctrination than you had. And they really didn't have that ability to kind of step back or have the courage or the confidence to step back and say, well, this doesn't make sense, because, the people that gave them food and shelter and explained the world to them, they were the ones also telling them, hey, this is how the world is. And they gave them religion. And so they never really had a reason to question it. And after years and years and years, that kind of thing just sticks with you. Kind of like speaking English, right? We all speak English because we were born in an English-speaking country to parents that spoke English, whose ancestors spoke English, et cetera, et cetera. If I told you, hey, tomorrow I need you to start speaking French, you'd probably have a difficult time, right? And so I think that kind of relates to speaking to somebody and saying, hey, tomorrow you're going to be an atheist. It's not a quick transition that people can make, nor can they understand it with ease. And so I think for you to be able to define what an atheist is, because it sounds like you have trouble describing who you even are in that context, right? Being able to define what it is and having the confidence to outright say it would be a big step in the right direction for you, in my opinion. Okay. I think that if you were to say, hey, look, I'm an atheist because I'm just not convinced that a God exists, that the theories or the positions that have been presented to me over the course of my life don't make sense. And until the time that they do make sense, I'm going to be a non-believer. And that's basically as simple as it is.
Yeah. And you know what? I kind of explained that to him in like an analogy. It's like I kind of explained it. I was like, if a Muslim man grew up in a small village where there's like not too well of like outside like technology, you only know this one thing, and that's and so that's kind of how it is for him. It's like, dude, you gotta like widen your perspective, dude. So
it's easy to be judgmental, and we don't want to do that, right? But At the same time, the burden is on somebody making the claim. And if your friend tells you that God exists, then you could always just ask your friend, okay, well, I don't see it that way, but maybe you can explain it to me, So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, I hope all of that helped you. I mean, I'm going to co-sign everything that Jimmy said. I don't know if I have much to add to that. But thank you for calling in, and let us know. Maybe you can call back and let us know how it goes with your friend, or if you need to talk through any other arguments that may come up. Feel free to let us know. We do have a few other callers, so we are going to move on. But it was really good talking to you, and I hope that you're able to talk to your friend a bit better.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thanks, Cam.
Yeah, thanks, and have a good rest of your day. All right, we did have a couple super chats come in. We had one from Pebuki for $100. Thank you for that incredibly generous donation, and there was no message with that. Thank you. Oh, and Pebuki sent another one for $200. Absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for your contribution. There aren't any messages given with that, but we greatly appreciate it. And we also, speaking of supporting the channel, we have our top 5 patrons of the week. So we read off the top 5 every single week, and there's often a steep competition to see who's going to get on the list. So if you want your name to be read in the top 5 patrons, you can go to the Patreon, like I mentioned earlier on in the show, and you can compete for your name on the list. Jimmy Jr., would you like to read the top 5 patrons this week?
Sure. I would love to, because I've always wanted to say this name out loud on an ACA podcast.
Today is your day. It is your day to say it.
Dingleberry Jackson. And then we have Ayame, who is also a frequent patron. Oops, all singularity. Devor Valjean. I'm going to put a little accent on that. I hope I got that right. Kalevi Helveti, and honorable mention, Jose Huerica. Familiar with a lot of those names. Thanks, guys, for being top patrons, and keep it up.
Yeah, you all did a great job. And I think maybe it's ACA initiation that at some point you get to try your hand at reading the names off of that list. We also have another super chat coming in from Ben9. I like your name. Ben is a great name, for $4.99, and there's no message with that, but thank you for your support as well. And we do have a couple more calls, but I want to continue our announcements. So make sure that you check out an amazing show right after this one. The newest episode of the flagship show of the ACA, The Nonprofits, which will air live at 3 p.m. Central Time today at tiny.cc/YTNP. And the ACA wants you to know what's going on in our community, and we have an updated website. So go over to www.atheist-community.org, where you can learn about the organization and its policies and how you can get involved. Also, we want to hear from you. If you want to send us messages, if you want to tell us how much you enjoy our content, or if you want to tell us you don't enjoy our content, if you want to tell us how terrible our arguments were, you can let us know. You can email at tv@atheist-community.org and let us know all of your thoughts, and we will be getting those messages. And we also had another super chat from Pebuki, who's the MVP of the super chats this week. Another $200, which is absolutely incredible. Thank you for that donation. All of your donations. It's absolutely incredible. And with that, I want to take Kathy, who's an atheist, she/her from Illinois. Kathy, it sounds like you want to talk about the Universal Unitarian Church. What would you like to say about that?
Yeah. Well, just recently I began going there. A friend brought me for what they call family game night. And first of all, the building is really cool. the fellowship hall, they call it. I just call it the coffee room. Anyway, it sits up against the woods. It's a big glass wall there, and it's just surrounded by nature and wildlife. And the thing about this church, their principles are just based on human values that I think, most of us hold, or we should hold. Even when they describe what they believe doesn't have anything to do with God. There is a time where they might use the word spirit or spiritual. I mean, I think of that as just like morale or togetherness that, gets people fired up. But it's just about they believe in freedom of religion or no religion, and toleration of others' beliefs, such that we can all get along and be open-minded, which is right where atheism comes in, critical thinking, open-mindedness. But also they're going to start telling me about where this religion came from. It came from Christianity, where people began to say, no, that's not really true. And when they would preach, they might be ostracized from their community. But for me, it's just a really good place to meet people and have community that I've heard a lot of atheists say that, they miss. And also because if you have children and you'd like to see them be someplace where they can be around other people that aren't, pushing Christianity mainly, or, any kind. So basically that's all I really wanted to do, was encourage atheists who are looking for community. That's a good place to start. Even sometimes we'll say, it's too bad we call it a church. Let's change that C to the word congregation. It's the Universalist Unitarian Church.
Yeah, I have a couple issues with the Unitarian Universalist Church, but I want Jimmy to kind of give his thoughts on this before I jump in.
So I am not all that familiar. I've heard them before, but what I would say is that I would have an issue with this idea of a spirit. I'm not really sure what that means. I think that's kind of an undefined phrase and maybe a catch-all for people who haven't really walked away from their religion completely. I think it's a great thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to put your call down by any means. That I think that you encouraging people to kind of embrace their atheism or embrace their freedom to believe what they want to believe and still maintain a humanist relation with the society around them is a great thing, and I agree. I wouldn't subscribe to the idea of a spirit, or to necessarily even going for any kind of religious-like ritual. That's just my take on that. I've kind of put that behind me, and it kind of just resembles the things that I disagree with, because that's how you arrive at a religion. And so that's just my footnote on that.
Yeah, I think it's my particular take is I think it's a great concept. I think it's a good idea for community building, and like there's definitely a place in society for having like interfaith relationships with other people and being able to put aside those differences and beliefs and having a conversation and doing public service together and all that. Like those are all great things. My biggest concern, I think, with an organization like this is like if you're going to be a humanist, like at some point that's going to come into conflict with the idea of having any one of these religions, because I know this organization will allow you to still be Muslim or Hindu or Christian or any number of things, and there are points within the religious doctrines themselves that conflict with humanism. And my question is, I guess, like if you're going to basically, like, it's great to have this support and this like like cooperation among these groups, but is that masking areas where humanism isn't being followed, or like if people aren't being properly respected? Like, for an example, if you have a Muslim who is part of this Universalist church and they still practice, like, I mean, the Universalist Unitarian church is going to say, yeah, you can practice whatever you believe is the truth, but then this person still has their Muslim faith of having to wear the hijab and having very restrictive areas in society where they can work, restrictive gender roles. There's certain things that I think are at odds with humanism, to where I just don't know if that line is really helpful. What do you think about that? I'm curious.
I'll tell you, me, yeah. I take your point, because I'm very anti-religion myself, of all the harm that is done, especially, to children, abuse, and definitely LGBTQ plus. I would say that probably this particular church in my area where I live, it just happens to be so not pushing any of those religions. When we say we accept, we also take in small groups where we're actually not just being educated about the church, but we get to discuss. And, I've gone in and said things simple like, even when we'd say, humanism, and I'll say, well, I'm a humanism, but I also don't believe in a God. And my biggest problem is, if you are religious, there could be times, instead of using your critical thinking, you would go to, well, I don't know, so it must be God. I mean, we talk about that all the time, don't we? Sure, part of it's probably just my particular location, and like you were saying, doing good works for your community. And honestly, I find it a great place to do what the one caller was saying and proselytize the opposite. One of our discussions where they were almost being critical of humanists is saying that, something about how, well, they think they're so smart. Well, we can't help it if we're smart, can we, as far as looking at reality? Because I have a big problem with what I see as just not being realistic. That's real heavy in Christianity and in the other, like you were talking about, the rituals, the ceremonies, or whatever they call their particular beliefs in Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, Taoism. Those are all in the front of what they call the sanctuary, where, it starts out as, well, we accept your beliefs, but I think we look at it more as what is their history, their history in those religions, and just pull out that spirit part of it. And like I said, it's just a great way to be able to express yourself on a regular basis about your non-belief. Because, I've met tons of atheists just in this church of about 400 people. It's almost surprised me. Oh, wow, you can just tell by the way they talk, and you can come right out and say, I'm an atheist. But so that's really all I wanted to do, was encourage people to consider that particular system. If you have children, or if you're an older person like myself, I think it's good for me anyway. It's been really good for me.
Yeah, Jimmy, any other thoughts on this?
Disconnect? Oh.
Yeah. Thanks, Kathy. So I have a couple of issues. So you raise, and I this kind of capitalizes on what Ben was talking about, but there's this idea that you have to respect other people's religions. I disagree with that entirely. I don't think that we are obligated to respect people's religions. We need to treat people with respect and treat them, of course, in accordance with basic human rights, with dignity. But I don't need to respect that women are treated poorly, or homosexuals or LGBT members are treated poorly in other religions. And so that's not something that I need to champion. And so that's why I would have an issue kind of conflating my beliefs with the beliefs of a handful of various other religions, and trying to get everybody together and harmonize about, well, we have in common this idea of a spirit. That's also something that I find a little bit tricky. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. I think that's something that is not mentioned enough, where people say, well, you got to respect what they believe. You don't have to respect what they believe. You have to treat them with respect. On that note, I would just say, I am not, trying to discourage you. I think your openness and your discussion, your willingness to kind of engage with people that are not as like-minded as you is great. And I would say keep up the good work. And yeah, thanks for making this suggestion.
Yeah, I think it can, like, I hope you're not discouraged by our comments. I do think that it can be used as an avenue to have some good conversations, and especially if you want to work with people who are religious and work on getting them to understand humanist principles and use their beliefs in ways that do benefit society, even if they aren't going to deconvert. I do think that it can be a good avenue to do those kinds of things. I have a couple of those concerns, like I mentioned, but I'm not throwing it out altogether. But I appreciate you having this conversation
I have those same concerns. I really do. Yeah, I really do have those same concerns, especially as an older person who is already looked at as having a certain amount of being wise, and will listen to me, and see how I act about what I just consider, well, I don't want to say mentally, but not living in the real world, especially now with all the problems that we have with our government and the attitude towards the LGBTQA community. So, but I mean, I appreciate that you would caution me, but I just want to reassure you that I guess it was more about my own excitement about finding a place where I'm almost teaching, So thanks for your time, and you guys have a good day.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. And
yeah, I'm glad you're happy, Kathy.
Right,
thanks.
Yeah, and again, I think everybody has their own kind of ways of getting involved in things, in different ways that they want to engage in these conversations, and different, like, I know there are plenty of atheists that are in like cultural pagan communities, and that's something that they find joy in, those rituals, and joy in having a spiritual building, even if they don't necessarily subscribe to spirituality. And I do respect that, and I do appreciate that can be a productive avenue for a lot of people. So I hope people aren't taking this as shutting down any ideas of people who want to do that. There are lots of different flavors of atheist, and if this is an avenue that you want to go down, then I'm not going to stop you. Just try to make sure you're not losing some of those humanist aspects as you go about doing that. So we do have one more call on the line, and we'll wrap up the show here soon. But I do want to let you all know about the exciting live shows in the Austin area on June 25th, 2023. If you're going to be in the area around then, please consider joining us for the live broadcast of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. Talk Heathen is going to be hosted by Objectively Dan and Jamie the Blind Limey. And the Atheist Experience is going to be hosted by Christy Powell and Jimmy Jr., who's on the show with me today. So doors open at noon, and we hope to see you there. And make sure you're parking in a legal spot. I've been there a couple times. It's kind of hard to find a good spot to park, but you'll figure it out. You might end up playing Tetris a little bit, but it's definitely worth the effort to get out there if you can. Even if one of these months you need to take a road trip with your family or take a plane trip with your family, I can tell you it's definitely worth it. It's an absolutely fantastic time. So try to head out there if you are able to do that. And we're going to take the last call for the day. And this is Zabi, who's an atheist, him from Michigan. and it sounds like you want to talk about what brought you out of religion and how we deal with religious family. Would you like to expand a little bit on this question?
Yeah, sure. So I was a theist, and so what happened, I did some research. I watched your shows, and even before that, I was struggling to understand religion and theism. So I did a little bit digging, and then I decided, well, there is no good reason to believe that God exists and that he's all good and all powerful. So what happened? And then I decided to say that, well, I don't believe in such a being or agent. And I spoke with friends and people around me, and so their ideas have their idea about even about me has changed. Not necessarily that I care about like what they think about me, but I'm like, you are a good man. How can you change your idea about someone who, whether it doesn't matter, like if I say that God exists or not, or like what do you get from it? You're a good man. You can be good in regardless, and in your religion or in your perspective, your religion advocates some of it, which not entirely. Some of it advocates for you being kind and good, but why you're not? I mean, what has changed? Why do you see me differently when I can be the same person? I'm the same person. I just happen to not believe an entity or a being that you say is all good when the evidence showed me otherwise. So and to make them understand and talk in a way, it's not going good. So
I definitely empathize with you. And I mean, something that, I mean, this might be discouraging or encouraging depending on how you look at it, but like whether or not they change their mind isn't your fault, which kind of may be discouraging because it means that even if you say everything correctly, it doesn't mean that they're going to change their viewpoint, which is kind of frustrating, but it's kind of relieving in the fact that it means that, you know, you're probably not having a detrimental impact if you don't say everything perfectly. But you can kind of approach the conversation in that way. I find that to be helpful, not only with atheist conversations, but even talking with people about trans rights, saying like, I'm the same person I was yesterday. I just have different reasons now for doing the things that I do. And if you want to talk about being a good person, a great way is to say that now you're doing good things for the sake of benefiting humanity, for helping the people around you, and for being a contributing member of your community. Whereas maybe beforehand you did good things because you were told to do good things, or because you were threatened of a punishment if you didn't do good things. And I think that's something that people might be able to more easily understand. Like, I know a lot of people bring up this example of if you're sitting in a restaurant and you've got your children sitting there with you, and one child is behaving because they know that they would rather not other people be loud and annoying, and that person's probably doing better than the child that only stays quiet because they were told you're going to be punished if you get home if you're loud and annoying. So maybe using examples like that can help, but it might take them a while to understand that you're the same person, and it might, unfortunately, it might seem like you're constantly demonstrating to them that you're the same person and like trying to constantly be on your best behavior around them. And I totally empathize with that. But I want you to know that like they may not ever understand your perspective on that. But I do think trying to approach it from a place of empathy and understanding that they might not know any other atheists. They might really believe that this is you becoming a worse person. So maybe be patient with them, and hopefully they'll be convinced, but there's no guarantee about that. Jimmy, do you have any thoughts?
Sure. Quick closing comments. I agree wholeheartedly with everything Ben just said. I would say approach it delicately, and don't do what I did when I realized that I didn't believe anymore and kind of lash out at the world around me because I was angry, that I had kind of just believed something that I felt wasn't true anymore, and I felt like my life could be different. It's a process for us to change and adapt and accept our new realities. But in order to bring the world around us into that new reality, just approaching it delicately and understanding that this could be a difficult change for some people is an advantage to have. Kill them with kindness is I think, a good approach.
Any thoughts on that, Zabi?
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's. I have one more question.
Yeah, go for it.
With me particularly, the people that are so dear to me, I did not tell them. So I've been atheist for a very long time now, like more than a couple of years, more than like 3-4 years. So I don't live with them. They're in a different country. But for them, I understand if like they ask me or they talk to me, oh, do you pray? Why? And I say, well, guess what? I do. When I don't, it's just because I don't want to crush them because they wholeheartedly believe that an entity and they would worry about me, and they believe in hell, and then they believe that, okay, if you don't, then you know what I mean? It's kind of like, is that the right approach, you think?
I think it depends on kind of what you want out of this relationship, and you're going to have to determine what risks you want to take and are willing to take for certain aspects of this relationship. I know probably like, and this probably the ideal situation would be where you could be honest with them and that they would love you and support you no matter what, and that everything would be fine and dandy, and that being honest would open more doors in the relationship. Like, I'd love to be able to say that, and that might be true. That might be true for a lot of people. I can't say that with 100% confidence because I know even with my own family, that's not really how it is. Like with my family, I'm open with them about being an atheist, but we don't talk about it. We have a boundary pretty carefully set where we don't talk about religion because I care, and I think my family cares more about our relationship and keeping those bridges than we do about arguing about the things we disagree about. So we've decided for our situation to agree to disagree. And I don't think it's ideal. I don't want it to be the case. You might find with your family that being honest might help you maintain a more genuine relationship, but that also might not be the case. And if you do think that your family would be absolutely guilt-ridden, because that's a concern I have with my own family too, is knowing that my family probably pray frequently and grieve the fact that they might not see me in heaven someday. And that's a very real concern from them. And so I can empathize with if you don't want to put them through that. I don't think that there's a set right answer for how to handle this. I think you need to weigh out what you want your relationship with your family to look like and kind of where you want to draw those boundaries. I don't think pretending to be religious is necessarily wrong. Like I think, like, ideally, sure, you don't want to lie to people, But I do feel like there are times when concealing a little bit of the truth to maintain a relationship might be the right answer, and you have to weigh that out for yourself. Jimmy, any thoughts?
Along with what Ben said about weighing what your relationship might look like, you also have to consider maybe your own mental health. If you actually absolutely get to a point where you just can't live like this anymore and you have to be honest, well, that's a line that you have to draw, and that's a situation that you yourself have to confront. And if you have principles that don't allow you to tell the lie anymore, well, then you're in a different circumstance. It's going to require you to make some hard decisions, and it might not be easy. So just be cognizant of that.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope that was helpful for you.
It's a little bit different. I was so religious, praying all the time, growing up religious, and my family is the same, and so probably I don't think that it's, but sometimes I'm just in the state of, okay, I don't know what to do.
And that's an okay response to have. And you don't have to make the decision today, right now. Think about what we've talked about today, kind of process all of these points and come to a decision when you're ready to. And I think over time, you'll get more and more comfortable with what needs to be done and how much confrontation you want to have. But you don't need to make this decision today. And I hope that you can have some space to think about it and maybe process with other people as well, if you have other people that you can process with. But otherwise, you're also free to call back if you think of other things that you want to mention or don't know how to handle a confrontation with your family. Please call back in. We'd love to hear more from you. Unfortunately, we are at the tail end of the show, so we're not going to be able to talk a whole lot more. But I hope today's conversation at least gave you something to think about. And I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Thank you so much for taking. I appreciate you guys, and I love you guys.
Yeah, well, thank you for
thanks, Zabi,
being part of the community and for calling in. I hope to talk to you in the future. All right, and we have a final super chat for the show from Marsha Everett, $2, saying, can we change Atheist Day from March 23rd to April 13th? And I'm not the arbiter of Atheist Day, so I guess we'll have to find out who is in charge of Atheist Day, and I guess send them everyone's. I don't know who this person is. If you can think of who that person is that controls Atheist Day, we can just spam them with emails telling them to change the day. And also for people, I don't know if you're like me, but I really like the content that the ACA produces. And if you're like me and are the type of person that wants to just binge watch content all the time, well, there's really good news for you, because we have a 24/7 AXP TV live stream. So you can be there. It doesn't matter if it's 3 in the morning, if it's 6 in the morning, whatever time you feel like binge watching the Atheist Experience, you can go over to AXP and watch the 24/7 TV live stream. And there are show episodes, clips, and specials from the entire 26 seasons of AXP. And you can even just watch or listen to certain episodes that have your favorite hosts on them, and find out kind of some new hosts that maybe you haven't seen before. You can find that at tiny.cc/AXPTV to join in on that. And a reminder for all of you, we have the Talk Heathen to Me question of the week. So complete the question. If God is so great, why doesn't it blank? Reply in the comments and tune in at the beginning of next week to find out if your comment is one of the top 3 selected to be read out on the air. And Jimmy Jr., it's been absolutely fantastic hosting with you today. And for people that weren't here earlier, can you kind of explain to the audience who you are, what you do, and where we can find more about you?
Sure. Well, I am active on Twitter sometimes. Sometimes I'm not. But Jimmy _Junior_NY for New York. I am a military veteran with over 13 years of service in the Air Force. I recently transitioned into teaching college, and I'm looking to do some work with the Military Association of Atheists and Free Thinkers. So that'll start taking place pretty soon. So I'd like to plug that organization there. Just for like-minded individuals like myself, people that are in the military that are really not sure where to turn because, there's not a whole lot of doors, at least at the surface, for people like us. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. Ben, this was a successful show. I'm going to give all the credit to you.
Please don't do that.
I think
were
we had
amazing as well. So
thank you. Great callers today. Great callers. And yeah,
absolutely.
I couldn't have had a better experience.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on the show today. And for everyone in the audience, if you like today's show, remember that there are ways to support this content and make sure that it gets out to a larger audience. And if you don't have the ability to financially support the channel, that is okay, because you can like the video, put some comments in the comment section below, and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and all of that. You all don't understand how much that helps the channel. So even doing that is absolutely amazing. Please comment in the comment section below, like the video, and subscribe. If you do want to financially support us, you can become a member by clicking the join button below the video. You can join us on Patreon at tiny.cc/PatreonTH. You can also find the channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. So if you don't want to see any of our faces, you can visit tiny.cc/AEN podcast. You can join the Talk Heathen community in our fan-run Facebook page at tiny.cc/FBTHG. And if you'd like to continue the discussion after the show, you can join us in ACD, our fan-run Discord server at tiny.cc/ACD Discord. We will be there after the show today, so come hang out and ask us some questions or tell us what you liked about the show. Also, make sure that you check out the newest version of the ACA show, The Nonprofits, which will air live at 3 p.m. Central Time today at tiny.cc/YTNP. And we couldn't do any of this without the amazing crew. So let's go to the crew cam. And we got Crew Cat as well. Thank you, crew, for all of your amazing work, for having this happen every week. And I have to shout them out because they're not only working on Sundays. They don't just show up and do work behind the scenes for the shows. These people are constantly working behind the scenes all week to get this stuff going. So they're doing a lot, and I cannot thank them enough. So let's throw out some love rings for our audience. There we go. And to all of our viewers, whether or not you believe, if you are an essential worker, please continue doing what you're doing. I know it's been years now since COVID first started, but we are still grateful to everybody out there in hospitals, delivering mail, everybody stocking the shelves. You're all doing amazing work, and our community would not be the same without you. And if you don't believe, this is your community. We're here to help you interact with your family that may be difficult for you. If you don't have a family to go to that is accepting of you, we are that space for you. And we have plenty of options for you to get to know us better and to interact with other people that may be in the same situation. And if you do believe, we don't hate you. We're just not convinced.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.